Hey, team players, and welcome back. Today's episode is going to be all about one of the most important things you need to know in any fantasy draft: who to avoid. And yes, we're doing this earlier in the process. And part of the reason is we want to be on the record, because when we're going to give winning advice, as we have throughout the last 2 years, we want to be able to be on the record for you to know what's going on and what's not, particularly in your winning ways. You have to know who not to have, and that's what today's episode is, all through that live underdog draft. So, guys, Bob will be joining us here in a second as soon as he is ready. You know how his school life is. Sometimes it's awesome, sometimes it's not. But here we are getting prepared for another underdog draft. Bob, you went off last week about one of the most easy people to hate on, as far as don't have them in your world, get them off your dynasty leagues, and that's Ramondre Stevenson. At the end of the day, what Ramondre is bringing to the table is a whole lot of nothing. And I have the argument that might be the entire New England world, but you're not all the way there with me yet. But you are with Ramondre. Get him out of your life. Let's get rid of him. So let's jump with why that's an easy bucket to start this show of shade off.
Well, so a couple of reasons why, right? So one, he's in the dead zone. So when you're operating in the dead zone of running backs, one of the things that you need to look for is any pathway that will lead to success. So if you look at a guy like Ramondre and you look at where his possible potential pathway to success would be, it would be with an increase in offensive line help and a better passing game. Maybe it leads to more red zone opportunities. Okay. So then let's think, well, if Ramondre was any other running back in the league, not named Ramondre Stevenson, maybe that would be enough for you to think, well, maybe the New England Patriots will go out there and get an offensive line. Maybe. They already have a quarterback who is turnover prone, but it's his rookie season. Maybe he gets better. They're going to surround him with weapons, or they should surround him with weapons. Then you say, okay, coaching change. Maybe that makes the difference in philosophy. Well, then you go back and you look, well, who is Ramondre as a player? Ramondre is a player that's only cracked 1,000 yards one time. He's never gotten above, I want to say like 8 touchdowns in a season. Maybe even less than that. Let me look it up real quick. So when you look at his stats and you say, okay, well, where's the marker? So 7 was in 2024. So 7, 4, 5, 5. You're like, okay, maybe I can suffer through that in the 8th round. Maybe. And then you go, okay, well, where is his usage? Where is his opportunity? He's sitting around between 130, 200 carries in a season and not accumulating any yards. So you're like, okay, well, maybe there's value in the touchdown market for Ramondre. And you go, okay, well, most of those touchdowns didn't occur within the 20-yard line. So he's not being used where it matters. He's not being used where he can make a difference. And if I'm going to go after a player in that round, maybe let's say you compare him to a guy like Aaron Jones, who's being valued in a similar capacity. Aaron Jones, when he lands on a team, whatever team he lands on, he has kind of similar issues. But mainly he's older and he is injury prone. He's injury prone. And we all know this to be true. So, hey, Ryan, what's up? And so that's the kind of the thing you have to look at is when you're drafting players that are on people's fade lists, is there a potential that they could be wrong and that person actually has a pathway for success? And if I can put 5 reasons before the potential for success, I'm not drafting that player. If I have 3 reasons that player won't be successful, I'm probably not drafting that player. 1, I could probably talk myself into that. Like I could talk myself potentially into Aaron Jones, but I can't talk myself into Ramondre. But Ryan here, as we talk about...
And Ryan, it's so appropriate you're answering this question. We started this off with the player you should be shading and avoiding the most as Ramondre. So I don't think there's a chance in hell you'll get him straight up for Godwin, But if you could do it, he's the one you should get rid of. Quite frankly, I made the argument of get rid of both of them for Godwin.
Yeah, and Ryan, if I'm being honest with you, we talked with a couple commenters on Monday, and it was really hard in their Superflex leagues to get rid of both of those style of running backs. Players like ETN, players with Ramondre. I would put ETN a little bit higher in my. I kind of like him a little bit more than Ramondre, but he has the same issues as Ramondre.
A lot of them.
And there is a problem where you're selling two players that have basically minimal to zero value with the running back class that's coming out in this year's NFL draft. And so the problem being, Ryan, is that you're going to have to most likely pair both of these players up. You're not going to get CMC for them. You might. It's a dynasty league.
You're also better off getting Godwin for him than CMC.
But I really do think that the pathway for success for you is to pair up Ramondre and Etienne, or Ramondre and a pick. Obviously, you're okay letting loose both of these guys. And personally,
as you should be.
Both of these guys have really minimal value. I was just treading through some messages and message boards and stuff, and people are deciding if they want to get rid of Ramondre for like a 3rd round pick in a dynasty superflex. You're looking at basically nothing in the 3rd round, and that's what people value Ramondre Stevenson at right now. So you're going to see in these early best balls that most people are willing to take a chance on him in round 8. I honestly think that he's not going to be the starting running back for them going into this next year. I do think they're going to replace him with one of the rookies that's coming in that will be a little bit more provocative.
They need to
at the very least. But I think that if you're going to move Ramondre, I think if I'm moving Ramondre and Etienne, I think it's probably an easier sell to move into a guy like Godwin. And it's most likely, if you watch this draft, you're probably going to want to target guys that you could get in the 4th or 5th round. So if I'm selling Ramondre and Etienne, that's like the equivalency of an 8th round, 9th round pick and a 10th, 11th round pick. You could probably move yourself into a player that's being drafted in the 4th and 5th round. I don't want Jaden Reed this year, but you could probably get into a guy like Jaden Reed.
And back to your original question,
Godwin is the guy I would want to get into out of those two players.
Yeah.
CMC or Godwin.
Because CMC is actually one of these guys that we built today's episode for talking shade. And the reason for that is soft tissue injuries tend to be the end. And he's now had his last major one, missed most of the year. And the elephant in the room that people are wanting to ignore, Mason broke a lot of records in an 8-game stretch for San Francisco until he got hurt. It's an incredibly powerful system there. Mm-hmm. And I think that as they jettison Debo, they're going to make CMC more of a slot anyway. And you're going to lose a lot of that value in production to Mason. He went from a never split carry guy to now a split carry guy, and he's not Gibbs.
I don't necessarily agree with you on the role, but I do agree with you that there is going to be some split happening. I thought that was going to be the case this year coming back as well. And I believe that's going to be the case this year. Ryan, if you want to send us your whole team, we might be able to rig up a couple good trades as well, and let us know what players you want to keep. And we can think about how we can construct and move forward into this offseason here. So Joe, the player that I am really interested in here, 2 guys. Obviously, if Gibbs falls to us,
Gibbs didn't fall. Gibbs is who I was going to take. He was the top of the board.
But I really like Nico in this slot.
Oh, we're on the same page, Bob. I love this. Love it. I'm on Nico first because I want to do a Stroud late.
One of the reasons why
we're not doing Nico.
Okay. All right. Puka's there. I'm okay with Puka as well.
Yeah, it's Puka or Amon for me.
You like Amon more? We can take Amon.
I like Amon more because I if Stafford's not there, I don't know if I like Puka.
Okay, we can go with Amon. So, the one thing why I like Nico here out of this collection of wide receivers particularly is the connection that he does have with CJ Stroud. That almost immediately after coming back from injury, he was back to being the guy. And that can't be an understatement. one of the things about Amon-Ra, which I said was problematic for me going into the back half of last season, was that he gets his points in bunches oftentimes. And so depending on the game script and how they use him and how Ben Johnson last year was game scripting, Amon-Ra was a powerhouse in PPR. Powerhouse. But in half PPR, his value kind of goes down a little bit, but the touchdowns are still there. So I think out of all these guys, he is one of the safer options out of the first round. And to Joe's point, you might want to start thinking about fading a player like Puka if the quarterback situation isn't right. I like Puka personally, and I wouldn't fade him, but
McVay came out and said his number one goal is to keep Stafford, but he also has to be cap compliant, and it's going to be really hard to pull both of them together.
Probably continue to slide a little bit. Not much, probably only 2 or 3 positional values, but you might start seeing people take Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas over him. Now, I do have an issue with Neighbors. It's not because of his skill set. It's because I do have a genuine concern about who's going to throw him the ball.
This is going to be JT, Bob.
I would still love Malik Neighbors as well. I think when we look at all these running backs too in this next round and look at all these players before we get to Ryan's comment here, that if I'm looking at all the talent at this level, particularly in the second round, we talked a couple weeks ago about Drake London and how Drake London, for most people in the second round, could be a potential of a void.
He should be a void.
Especially if, depending on how you're constructing your team. And I feel much safer. I'm skipping Drake London in the second round mostly.
Yeah.
The reasons are many, but mostly because I want to get one of these 7 running backs on my team, because there is not another really valuable running back that you would want to draft until
you start playing the rookie roulette,
the 4th round. And I think that when you take a guy like Drake, there's a lot of upswing potential for Drake. He has there's a lot of good things that Drake London does. And there's a lot of good things that I'm excited for Atlanta this year specifically. But I do think that there's a little bit more risk with Drake London at the wide receiver position than with a guy like JT or Bucky or HN. And when you look at the wide receivers that comes after that, I want to answer Ryan's question next here, Joe. When you look at the wide receivers that come after that, though, I will say that I am solid. If I just had a selection of those wide receivers and I didn't have any of those running backs, that I am solidly on in this order: Drake, Ladd, and then Tyreek.
Those are the guys I'm not. And I know that for everyone who's been watching us for a long period of time knows how much I love Ladd. He should not be a second-round pick in a half PPR league. I mean, he just should. He's a slot machine, and if they do what everyone says they're going to do, which there's enough availability to believe that they will, go get a major headline outside receiver in the vein of Devontae Adams, trading for George Pickens, something of that nature, even a Metcalf, you're going to see Ladd dramatically reduced, because it doesn't matter how good of a slot receiver you are, an elite outside guy will dig into your numbers. I mean, how Garrett Wilson could go out to the Chargers and make this entire problem happen.
Hey, so Joe,
I bring that up. As much as I love Ladd, he's not a second-round pick in half PPR. He shouldn't be.
Joe, if we have the opportunity, and Ryan, I want to go. I think I want to go Xavier Worthy here, Joe.
See, I want to go to Jigba. Well, that's not going to be an issue.
Okay. Ryan,
everything I just said with so we can go Worthy.
I like this deal, but I do think that.
So you want Worthy over Evans, just to clarify?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, Worthy it is.
When I look at the deal that you have in front of you, Ryan, Etienne and Ramondre for Godwin and Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller is like.
Don't even throw Kendre in there. Get a draft pick instead. Kendre Miller is dead.
Kendre is a Schrodinger's cat kind of situation, because when he's
just dead,
when he's on the field, you see some potential out of him, but then he's not on the field. So I do believe that in this offseason, the Saints are going to try to pivot into getting more talent in the running back pool for themselves. I do think that Kendre Miller will be used this year. How much
that
will he
guy's
be
got
used?
all of Philly.
How much will he be used? That's a very good question. But I do think that if you wanted to go out and get a player, it's probably not Kendre Miller. So I would say Etienne and Ramondre for Godwin and a pick, or Godwin and maybe if it's a super flex, maybe a third quarterback, or maybe something like that. Maybe like a Justin Fields if you could go after a guy like Justin Fields. I think that would be the pathway that I would take. Yeah, George, I'm there with you, man.
So Bob, I'm leaning
it's good
Zay
to see you again,
here.
George.
So I'm leaning Zay here because I don't want to put J-Mo on the roster.
Well, James Cook is still there.
James Cook is still there, but I'd rather go with the rookie roulette and get a better receiver.
Well, I don't think Zay's a better receiver. I think
we fundamentally disagree with Zay.
I think that's a little twisted, but
well, here it goes anyway. So it's basically, here's your top receivers: Rishi, Tet, Flowers, J-Mo, and Adunze. DK Metcalf.
If you want Zay, take Zay.
I think I want Metcalf.
Okay. If you want Metcalf, take Metcalf.
And here's the reason why, is if he gets moved, he has a no trade clause. He's got to put himself in a situation of success.
Yeah, I mean, I have, here's the thing. When it comes to Zay Flowers, there is the conversation that you've put to us before, Joe, that Zay's situation could drastically change depending on how Baltimore decides to move forward with tight ends in the offseason. It could drastically
if
change.
Andrews gets traded, Zay becomes instant. But if Andrews doesn't get traded,
on what's going on there. And Zay, again, Zay is not a bad player. We talked a lot about Zay last year. But Zay is one of those guys for me that has just slightly more value in a PPR league than he does in a half PPR league, because the touchdowns just aren't there.
And that's true. And Metcalf has more of an even distribution than Baltimore does, especially if he gets moved.
DK dealt with a lot of injuries last year, and they did make it so that they were going to pivot to passing the ball a lot. So the numbers for both Njigba and for DK Metcalf might be a little bit conflated a little bit, but I will say that I do prefer DK Metcalf in the round that I'm drafting DK Metcalf in. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. I honestly do. But I think DK's value here, I want to take a chance on that. I would rather take a chance.
The thing that I like about Njigba, which this will clear up obviously after free agency, is I think he's going to be the only show in town. If he has the lad effect of being the only show in town, you're talking amazingness. Hampton will be this pick, Bob.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
You know how I love my rookies. I'm already on the board with him. And if I get Trayvon Henderson on the next pick, I will take that as a home run.
I would have also been okay with I'd also been okay there with what's his name? Ken Walker. I believe Ken Walker was there. I'd have been okay with
Walker is still on the board. I just like the rookies more than them.
I agree with that. I'd also, if Chris Olave would have ended up back at that pick, I would have kind of fought you on that a little bit. I would have really liked if I could have got Chris Olave on this team.
Let me.
He's gone. He's gone.
Okay.
But I just feel.
Okay.
That's kind of the guy. And if Chuba ended up coming there, I'd have really thought about that.
See, that's because you don't see where I have a little bit of faith in where Hampton's going.
George, Tyler Warren is Joe's boy.
And he will be on this roster.
And you watch every single episode, me and family here, we will consistently say we like Tyler Warren, but not at the draft capital it's going to cost us to get there.
And I disagree. I think he's worth a 4th round pick.
We'll see. It's coming up at 2 more rounds until Tyler Warren. 2 more rounds.
Yeah, it's normally around pick 100-ish.
Joe said if he ends up getting up to pick into the 4th round, he's also comfortable there, which I think is a little crazy. But
I'm comfortable drafting him in the 5th round.
So
I cannot explain this enough. If he was a receiver instead of a tight end, one change,
all right, Joe,
same skill set, he's a top 5 player in the draft. and no one thinks this is
here.
crazy.
Refocus here.
Oh, I am focused. The Trayvon Henderson is the pick.
Okay, Travion. All
Yeah.
right. I guess that's okay.
Well, it's definitely okay. Your other best receiver was Caleb Johnson or Connor. I just personally prefer Travion because I think he's going to go higher than Caleb Johnson.
But to your point, draft. George, I don't like CMC. One of the reasons why I don't like CMC, and family, we've talked about this before, and we talked about it at the top of the show. CMC is one of those guys that is perceived to be a steal. He's perceived to be the player that you can't pass up at the top of the second round because you can't it feels like you can't get away from him. You're like, oh, I'd be disappointed if I don't take CMC. CMC is not who he used to be. These injuries that CMC has suffered this year, it has led to, and especially with the problems that San Francisco 49ers had with their offensive line this year and with just in general what they were dealing with this year, CMC is not a player you want to own. CMC in the second round is a landmine, at least for us here, because of the age implication, because of the injury implication, because of the offensive line implication, and because of the it's always going to be the same offense. And what's proven to be a fact is that although CMC is a light years legendary player, is that San Francisco is comfortable plugging in any running back that they have into the West Coast system. And if CMC can't go, they're not going to force CMC to go. So to spend your money on a player in the second or third round that is already injured, already dealing with a comeback, they could potentially be comeback player of the year, but the pathway to get there is not great and could be replaced by any running back, not be as good, mind you, but can play. And San Francisco can still win games. I'm just
Bob,
not seeing it.
I need to pause you here because I'm about to do something that we don't normally do if he's still on the board. I think I'm going Mahomes. And here's the reason why. I know Pacheco sucks. I know Hunt sucks. And he went anyway. Yeah. I think Mahomes would have been great since we already had Worthy. That being said, we need to get a good receiver here with this pick.
Joe, I potentially could be on the Hawk train here. TJ Hawkinson here. I see that Godwin might still be. Chris Godwin's not available anymore.
No, Ibuke, Shazier Downs, Golden, Cooper Kupp, Shaheed. If you want to go the Hawk, I can go the Hawk. We'll go Hawk and then Warren and be done at tight end with the entire draft. I
want to go the Hawk here.
Hawk and Warren, we're done with the whole draft.
Yeah.
No tight ends ever again.
All
right.
Yeah. So, because we talked on Monday about taking one of the things we wanted to do in this draft is to take two tight ends between the 7th to 12th rounds. See what happens. Is there a giant difference between Hawk and Jonnu Smith? No. Is there a giant difference between Hawk and Njoku? No. But what I do know is that when we look at Minnesota, they were dealing with Hawk's injury, and they had Johnny Mundt and they had Josh Oliver come in. There's some transitioning that potentially is going to happen there. But if they end up trotting out J.J. McCarthy, there could be a return to the old Jefferson, Hawkinson kind of conversation. And I'm willing to take a chance on that there. I know these quarterbacks are going. Bo Nix and Baker Mayfield are going.
We're probably about to see
a chance on Hawk.
So, Bob, let me ask you this. Well, never mind. Goff went. He's the one I would have taken. So we're going to take Warren here with the pick. It's the right pick. It's the right spot where he goes.
And then we're going to not do the backfield strategy in this draft. We're just taking
we're going to backfield with rookies and young guys. Potential.
Yeah, we're just taking two tight ends with this and see what happens. That's a good point. I mean, we could always go after a younger tight end and see what happens. It's always a possibility. We'll see what that back end gets us. But these two tight ends we feel are going to be fairly solid.
Oh yeah,
fairly solid. And both tight ends have the potential to spike multi-touchdown games, particularly TJ Hawkinson. And Joe believes Tyler Warren has that chance to do that as well.
I
And
know
family
Warren's
commented on
going to do
CMC.
that.
If you can get CMC in the third round, George, sure. But you can't. You can't. There will be a person, regardless of positioning in the second round, that will take CMC in the second round. Will take him. Chiefs will draft either Scatterboo or Travion Henderson. I know they don't run the ball, but they need a good running back talent. The reason they don't run the ball,
it's because they don't have a good running back. Chiefs are going to invest in their line, guys. They're going to get a late running back.
What you see, though,
baby.
The Chiefs have wide receiver talent. They're going to use Patrick Mahomes, their best player, to do the best thing that he can do, which is pass the ball. And there's conversation in the Chiefs world that Kelsey will not be full-time and that Kelsey is going to be a side piece. So you're going to look for these wide receivers on Kansas City.
Wait, is it officially coming back?
They're hoping. It's a conversation that's being had. So if they want to be better, they've got to get a running back that is explosive. They have to get a running back that they're going to be able to rely on to catch the ball and be explosive after the catch. Travion Henderson feels that. He fits the bill. Family, this year, I didn't have any disrespect for Kareem Hunt. You know that I know that Kareem Hunt should have been the starting running back for the Chiefs when Isaiah Pacheco came back. Then they tried to take away Kareem Hunt's carries, and then it sucked. Kareem Hunt is a capable running back. He is. But if the Chiefs want to win the big game again, they're going to have to be a little bit more balanced.
Hey, we don't need to say that. We can actually say the Super Bowl.
They're going to have to be balanced. So, Kareem Hunt is a guy that I'd draft, let's say, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th round if he's available in a regular league, because he did outplay Pacheco by a mile. But if the Chiefs have the ability, like you said in your hot take here, to go after Travion Henderson and they feel like they have fulfilled all their needs, because their defense is pretty solid, if not very, very solid.
All right, Bob, if you want to do safe quarterback, Purdy's the only one left. If not, I personally want to go in the direction of a receiver, which is looking at Bateman or Mims.
Go with the wide receiver. We'll go with the quarterback round 10.
Mims it is.
Because we don't really have any combinations with Brock Purdy.
We don't really combinations with anyone right now, Bob, to be totally blunt.
We could get a late Geno with DK.
Yeah, I guess we could. Unless he gets traded. That's the problem with him. Hey, a guy coming up next round that
Patrick Mahomes would have been nice.
Mahomes would have been nice, but he wasn't on the board for us. So much like a couple of on Monday when we didn't get our guy, we're not going to go scattering.
No.
But
yeah, I agree with this family.
Never really looked at.
Hunt makes his own holes. It's true. Absolutely true.
A guy we never looked at, Bob, that I want to throw out here for conversation is what if Travis Hunter plays wide receiver full time? We can get a guy who's going to be a top 5 pick in the 10th round.
But do you think he's going to be a wide receiver the whole time?
He will be on Cleveland.
I get it. I see where you're at. I understand how you're.
I think it's worth the risk, is what I'm basically going at. Because there's no one else in this space I love. There's Diggs, Keenan Allen, Trey Harris. I mean, we went Leggett a lot. I'm kind of falling off that bus a little bit. I do like Christian Kirk.
I don't.
But you hate him.
Yeah. I mean, if you'd like to go Travis Hunter here, I'm okay with that. Seeing as the quarterback room, we're probably going to be able to get a quarterback in round 11 here.
Yeah, we're going to take Richardson next round. We'll roll the dice. We're going to go running quarterbacks again because we have no stacks.
Yeah. So
we'll go Richardson, then Fields. Have 2 running quarterbacks. Boom, boom. And then we'll be set.
Yeah. This is the thing here, family. When we look at a guy like Travis Hunter, there's the pathway we talked about when we get to this round, looking at these groupings of players and looking at these groupings of wide receivers. Travis Hunter has the ball skills that the only thing that's holding Travis Hunter back from being the guy would be the fact that he wants to play multi positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if Travis Hunter is a full-time wide receiver, he is a very good full-time wide receiver. And if he is a full-time wide receiver and ends up complementary to another great wide receiver, let's say he ends up with Neighbors on the Giants, or
we're in the middle of a rainstorm here, people, so Bob might be getting cut out left and right. Just throwing that out here for you. But to Bob's point, as he got cut off here, Hunter could be electric. I mean, we know he's going to be a top 5 pick in the actual NFL draft, and that's just a thing there. So, but family, I do want to hit upon your point here that you hate Christian Kirk. I actually don't hate him. I think he's actually a really good value right now. Couple of reasons why. I'm really big on players that are going to be able to choose their new destination or have people, seeking out after them. Christian Kirk is essentially going to get traded, meaning a team that is going to want him. And anytime you have a guy who's going to be wanted, they use him. And I know that his last year was bad, but I actually kind of leaning more to it that maybe Lawrence is bad. Can we actually ask that question out loud? I'm not saying he's a full-fledged fade like I'm doing with some of these other guys in this draft, but I do want to throw that question out there legitimately and consider it. So with this pick, guys, I'm going to be ending up taking a quarterback to give me stability before I take the Russian roulette that will be Anthony Richardson and Justin Fields. I'm going to give myself a stable guy in the room, and looking at the availability of who's here and knowing that I'm going to play Russian roulette with rookie receivers later in this draft, I'm going to go Dallas because I'm almost 100% certain Dallas's number 2 receiver will be a rookie. And if I connect with it, it's great. Otherwise, Dak is still a decent enough threshold, and almost certainly they're going to have one of these elite running backs already on the team. So Dallas is going to be the direction I go here with Dak, and then probably Richardson and Fields for my next 3 picks. And then it'll just be pure rookie roulette after that. Because this time when you're doing draft before the actual free agency, that's all it is rookie roulette. But let's get the next question we got up here. Herbie all day over Dak. I just outlined why I'm going to go Dak. It's because of the potential in a stack. And also Herbie's not on the board right now, so I can't pick what's not there. So there's the official pick for Dak. So there we go. So you're stacking with... All right. Dowdle obviously should be a guy we're throwing shade on here, family. As throughout the rest of the draft, you guys see that we've never drafted Rico Dowdle. He's not going to be a starter. I indirectly just threw the burn on him last thing. And I get that you're saying we would have rather have had Herbert instead of Hunter. I disagree with that for a couple of reasons. A, we have no Chargers on this roster and no potential of having Chargers. You still do want to have a stack. I'm certainly not putting Dowdle out there because there's a very good chance that Hampton or Hendrickson is Dallas's starting running back.
Well,
so
that
there's a very real possibility I already have Dallas's starting running back on this team.
Annoying.
There's no way we were going to stack the Chargers based upon where we were at in this draft. So that's why we did go with Hunter. And you can probably say that 10th round pick was a luxury pick, but I'd rather have Dak regardless over Herbie.
I get it though. I can understand that viewpoint. Herbie's one of those players we were really high on going into this year. And in order for me to be back on the bus for Herbie as a fantasy football player, I really would like some more consistency with the wide receiver market. And Joe wanted to talk a little bit about QJ the other day.
Yeah.
And Joe, I want to give you some time today to talk about him after this next pick here, because I do agree with family to the extent that if you take Herbie then you can get a back end QJ. QJ will still be on the team, but I do think that there's going to be a push in the Chargers room to potentially go out and get another wide receiver to complement this team.
And that's the reason I'm shading QJ quite out, because you can't have all of this obvious fact that they need a true outside receiver. And
that was the weirdest, fastest Anthony Richardson click I've ever seen you do in your whole life.
Oh, because I've already outlined these 3 picks. I just told everyone about it while you were away.
But I don't like that. I don't like that you're outlining it. I don't like that because, I don't want to have overexposure to Anthony Richardson. I want to be.
Oh, back to the exposure. Well, see, Richardson for me is that we missed out on the stacks. If you look at who our receivers are a Amal. We didn't spend enough to get Goff, which I'm totally okay with. Mm-hmm. We would have taken Mahomes to stack with Worthy. Didn't quite happen. That's Metcalf, okay, we don't know what team he's going to be on. And Mims, Bo Nix was already taken. So the reason for going Dak was I believe that we have one of his running backs already with either Hampton or Henderson. And I'm fairly confident that we're not going to be able to stack anyone else. So give me the runners. Richardson is a runner.
Yeah, it is.
He can't pull the ball to save his damn life. I mean, it's just the way it is.
It totally is, man. I mean, I am more confident. And one of the things about Dak that I want to bring up is that Dak got hurt. And maybe if we could have telegraphed that we would want to take Dak a little bit later, then maybe CD would have been the pick over Amon-Ra. But I still think Amon-Ra is a great pick there.
Yeah, me too.
When it comes to Dak is one of those players that can catapult himself up in fantasy circles. That going back to 2 seasons ago, he had multiple top 5 fantasy finishes in a season. And getting a quarterback, looking at the quarterbacks in this same pocket, Trevor Lawrence can't do that. He won't do that.
He won't.
Michael Penix, maybe he can get a couple. Drake May, probably not.
Nope.
CJ Stroud, maybe.
Maybe.
Tua can. Cam Ward, probably not. So looking at that kind of structure of quarterbacks, I really don't mind taking Dak there because he is the best option available and does happen to have kind of the same abilities in terms of fantasy markets as Justin Herbert, with just, I think, if we knew what his other wide receivers were going to be, maybe I'd be a little bit more confident to push Dak a little bit higher up my board. But because we're not sure.
That was part of my argument for taking Dak, because when we go down these rookie roads, it's going to be a rookie. It's going to be their number 2. It's just, do we connect with the right one?
Tolbert has shown some talent. I mean, but
I think someone like Bosch will jump right past him.
Possibly. Jalen Royals could be on our radar.
Yeah, another great name.
I'd like to. I mean, if there's a rookie or if there's a running back that you like coming up, Joe.
This is gonna be Fields.
Okay. We have 3 running backs. Benson's a guy that I'd consider if he's still on the board.
See, I'm not sure Benson's rookie proof either. I mean, to be totally honest, Tootin's a better running back than Benson. Different styles, but he's better.
Yeah.
So I think Tootin is probably going in the 4th round, maybe the end of the 3rd. That's assuming he blows up the combine and runs 4.3, which I'm pretty sure he's gonna.
When we look at this, Ryan, I think that you could probably trade Bateman for a 3rd.
Rachaad White is a useless pick.
I agree with that.
So is Jalen for Jerome.
Hold on, Ryan. I want to get to this, but I want to show you guys something. If you joined us on Monday, you're going to notice what I said about JJ McCarthy. Joe, after you make this pick, scroll up, and I sheet it that guy who has JJ McCarthy right now has Justin Jefferson. And the only reason
he doesn't, I don't think so, at least.
JJ McCarthy is getting pushed up boards is because of the JJ.
Well, let's go see that. So let me put Fields on this roster. Now we're done at quarterback. We just got to play roulette. So JJ went to the 4th pick. He did have you did. You're right. So he did have.
That's the reason why I don't like JJ. That's the reason why I don't like JJ McCarthy. But in terms of this, I do think that Bateman is the guy that you could move. I think that he does, after what we saw this year, he does have potential within this offense to be successful, especially in half PPR leagues, Ryan. In full PPR leagues, maybe there's less value to Bateman, but the touchdowns are always nice. You don't want to go chasing touchdowns, but the usage is really nice. So Bateman's the guy that you could probably move for a pick. If you want to move him, I think you could probably get a 3rd-round pick for him. Looks like family here agrees, but people like to keep picks. So it can be really hard to get picks. I completely agree with that. Ferguson, baby. Yeah, he's one of those tight ends that coming here, Joe, taking Dak in the 11th. If we're in the future, if we're going to want or have this an output for Dak, I do think that we should, if we're going to go into this Tyler Warren tight end bus, that maybe a Jake Ferguson in the 12th round back-to-backing Dak and Jake would be a nice option as well. Because Jake Ferguson,
to that point, Bob,
show
we
some
we
talent.
really haven't settled into which
Better than the
quarterback
last
we
one,
want.
my family.
You know, like I know I love Fields, so I put him on every roster, but he's not the floor guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's a ceiling guy, which is how you win best ball. But we might need to settle on who our floor quarterback should be. I'm willing to have that conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean,
to me, this is an easy pick. This is gonna be Ollie Gordon.
I like these 3 quarterbacks. I think they're much better than much like by light years than the 3 quarterbacks that we had before. I think that that's going to be an interesting combination there. When it comes to wide receivers, I would actually, we have Dalton, Kincaid, Tucker, Kraft, likely Kyle Pitts, Ferguson, Otten, Freiermuth. I also heard Tyler Warren might go to the Saints. I
love that. It'd be
great. I
was
reminded of that because I was just looking at Juwan Johnson's name, and I think that
would be beautiful for him because Carr doesn't throw the ball downfield. You get 8 yards over the middle every play.
Carr does throw the ball downfield, depending on the coverages.
No, he only throws the ball down the field in the first quarter.
That's not entirely true.
It's pretty true. Watch the Heat's numbers.
It's not entirely true.
It's not that far from not true.
Yeah. Regardless, it's not entirely true. That's why I say that. We should pick up we can pick up a 3rd tight end in the last couple of rounds if we want to. I am interested in a wide receiver like Jalen Royal if he's still on the board.
Royal's going to be the next pick. He's already slated in as a baby.
Potentially, I find it intriguing, the Alec Pierces of the world, especially if you're getting Anthony Richardson. Alec Pierce is such a low volume wide receiver, but when he spikes, it's a nice spike.
Yeah, but Warren's going to Indy.
Fair point that you're trying to make there. Another, if another wide receiver to keep your eye on, it's a wide receiver that we were talking about. That one of the audience, one of the commenters, I can't remember. It might have been you, George Play, Jordan Whittington last year. If
Whittington's a guy I like. We've stashed him on a roster or two.
If Stafford comes back, I think he's a good choice. Even if Stafford doesn't come back, I think Whittington profiles decently well as a good option in that
I think
offense.
He's a good choice just because Cup's leaving, to be honest with you. He basically played that Cup role. He's obviously not going to put up Cup numbers.
Right.
But I think for the 14th round, 15th round, Whittington's certainly – he's a lot better than some of these choices around him that are going. I'd way rather have Whittington than Cole Kmet.
Joe, I was just going back in the chat. Family and I mean, we live on opposite sides of the world, but the wavelength is vibing.
You were tied at the heart over there.
Christian Kirk, man, Christian Kirk's one of the worst picks you can make in this draft.
See, I disagree.
I just want to be very clear.
I fundamentally and here's Bob. Here's why.
He's one of the wide receivers I'm avoiding.
Royals is going to be who we're going to take here. He's.
Oh yeah, look, there goes Whittington. There goes Pierce. We were just talking about those guys. There is a lot of nice potential there. So we're getting down into the nitty gritty here. Coming up into the 16th round. I'd like to.
I'm probably going Jordan Mason as our 5th running back on the next pick.
You see, now you are really in love with Jordan Mason.
I am.
I see where you're going with that, but
He was on pace for 1,400 yards.
Yeah, I again, this is
And
really
I do
much.
think he's going to be the true starter in San Francisco. I believe when you look at what the Niners are doing is they're going to move Debo. They're going to make CMC Debo take that job, and Mason's now the runner. So maybe he's not getting every goal line carry, but he's going to be getting most of them.
Yeah, I mean, he had a nice tear. So the first 4 games of the season,
he certainly should be going before Garendo.
After that, it got off the rails, and then he got hurt. So
yeah, but his tear was 8 games long, dude. It was solid.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. I do like Garendo's potential, but he was like basically out after 1 game. So
again, he's receiver. He's running back number 5.
Wandale. Anybody drafting Wandale in a half PPR league is not paying attention.
You know what that guy's doing? That guy is doing exposure percentages.
Not paying attention.
He doesn't have Wandale, so he needs to put some in his life. That's not a reason to get something just because you don't have it. Wandale, we're not 3 years old anymore. Build the best.
You guys know this. I love Wandale Robinson. You can't get me to not like a player like that with such a low A dot, but just catches. I mean, the guy.
But you hate Shakira.
Well, no, I don't hate Shakira in PPR. But if I can get Shakir value in the 16th round,
what is this guy doing?
Think about that. But
look at this guy's last picks: Cedric Tillman, Garendo, and Williams. Tillman has no one to throw him the ball.
Don't you besmirch
Garendo and Williams are basically out of the league.
You love Tillman. Don't besmirch him. You love Tillman.
I love Tillman when his quarterback was Jameis Winston. I don't not love him whenever it's TTR or whatever how that guy's initials are.
But listen, that's why that Travis Hunter pick in the 10th round is a little bit spicier than it needs to be. I think Travis Hunter is one of those guys that in order for me to want to select him consistently, I would want to understand, number one,
Bob, I'm not fighting that's a gamble, but he could be, if he goes to the right landing spot in May, he's a 4th round pick.
Right. No, that's why I mean he's
not drafted. Like that's the risk of Hunter.
He's a proper gamble at this point in time in the 10th round. But what I'm saying is, moving into like Bestball Mania season and whatnot, there's a couple things that we need to know before he starts to skyrocket up the board. Number one, what offense is he going to land on? What quarterback is he going to land with? Because I've heard rumors that there are teams that are planning to try to reconnect Shedeur and Travis Hunter. So then, if that's the situation,
that would be so asinine. Shadeur's going to suck. But it does show that Shadeur's dropping in the 2nd round, which someone came on. I'm just going on Shadeur's hate binge right now, guys.
Don't get into that binge yet. Don't get into that binge yet, because there are situations that are better than others, right? We talked about the potential.
Talking for Hunter now, right?
Yeah, we talked about the potential of Tet going to New England, but Travis Hunter in New England gives New England a reliable, dependable threat if they allow him to have the proper amount of targets in a game. So with the amount of times that Drake May was throwing the ball last year because they didn't have a run game to rely on, that could be an amazing landing spot for a guy like Travis Hunter, because he's most likely not going to play corner for the New England Patriots. But if there is any inkling that there is going to be shared snapping, so like 25 or 15% of the game will be on offense, and 75% of the game will be on, third down defenses or something like that, then he's useless. So I think that when it comes time for Bestball Mania season, that's going to be a conversation that a lot of people are going to be having, is that what's that usage going to look like if he is declaring that he is going to only play wide receiver? And if he's only going to play cornerback, well, then it was a wasted pick. But in the 10th round, I'm not I'm excited about the potential talent that he has to give to a team. And I do
So,
like
Bob,
that.
I think I'm leaning
spot.
Michael Wilson with this pick. It's either him or Botch or Bex.
I have no opinion about either of those either way.
I think I'm going Michael Wilson.
I
don't want to have all rookie receivers. I'm cool with all rookie running backs. I just want to make sure I'm going to have someone that's going to be on the field.
So, again, the value of Arizona wide receivers, in my opinion, they're kind of one of those teams, everybody. When we talked a little bit about players to avoid today, but a team that I'm generally avoiding is the Arizona Cardinals.
I get
the running, like, there are so many questions that we have to ask ourselves about the Arizona Cardinals, and it all starts with coaching. One of the things that we saw of the Arizona Cardinals this season is that they were a very influx fantasy team. There would be games where the running game would be amazing and stellar, and then occasionally a game here or there where Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison would go off. One of the things about Kyler Murray as a quarterback is that he wasn't spiking 25-point weeks unless he was rushing for multiple touchdowns. Trey McBride was an incredible weapon, but they didn't throw the ball to him in the red zone, had maybe 3 touchdowns all year. So I get taking a guy like Michael Wilson late, but I think that I just can't get behind Arizona as a team. There's just nothing that I'm excited about. So, I mean, Michael Wilson's a good enough player, but again, usage is a problem. And there's not a pathway that I can make for myself where that usage is going to be phenomenal to even warrant a 17th round pick. Now, in the 17th round, everybody has questionable usage, but
that's why I believe in taking traits or situations, especially for the rookies.
If Adonai Mitchell would have made it to us, I would have much rather had Adonai Mitchell than Michael Wilson, because at least we have Anthony Richardson, and maybe we can make an argument for that.
And that would be fair. But like for this part of the draft, I'm looking at, basically, I just want you to be 1 week in the top 5. And that if you get someone in the last 3 rounds who gets you 1 week in the top 5, you won.
Yeah,
you're not looking for floors at the end of your draft.
To Family's point earlier, I think it might be a good idea here to take another tight end.
Oh no, we leaned into this and we're owning it.
I know. I'm just saying, if you're ever in this position, there are reasons to believe in other tight ends out there. We saw a couple good games this year, at least a decent enough showing to warrant a second look at a guy like Theo Johnson. Right, Joe?
If we're going to do it, it would be Stinnett, who I do believe in.
Fair.
I do think if you want to do it, I can put him in here. It's between him and Akine.
I'd rather have Westbrook.
Yeah, me too. And if Stinnett's still on the board at the last pick, I'll take him.
And to this point, I agree with you. Travis Hunter has to go to a team with a creative coach.
Yeah.
You have to get Travis Hunter design plays. And this is something.
So aside from the Giants, what creative coach do we see in the top 5?
That's a good question, right?
I think that might be the problem then because if he can
But I don't think that a team is going to draft him unless they have a plan for him. I mean, you take a player with the top 10 pick, you obviously have an intentional plan on how this player is going to be used, how you want him to be a threat in the NFL. And out of teams that you're looking at, okay, and you can say, okay, well, who's a team that has a coaching staff that can do that? And Vrabel and Josh, I think, is a good landing spot. Maybe they don't get Tet. Maybe Tet's a little bit overrated in their opinion, and they go after Hunter. That happens all the time. I mean, you saw it whenever the Minnesota Vikings take, with the Jefferson Rager kind of.
The other part with New England is that if they do take Hunter, 100% he's playing wide receiver because they don't believe in it. They believe in having one great corner, which they already have.
That's what I said earlier. They already
Yeah.
have that. They're not going to do it again.
Well, no,
Thanks,
they
Dan.
do it again. He's a
Appreciate that, man.
receiver.
Yeah, when you look at Noah Fant, Noah Fant's one of those players that always seems to just be kind of hanging around in terms of fantasy circles. He didn't really do much last year
career, just hanging around
to warrant anything. And this year, but coaching situations changing. I mean, Grubb didn't really do anything to improve the tight end situation there, even though they were passing the ball an extremely high rate last year in comparison to their past. But again, he's not going to be on the team, right? I'm reading things that saying that he's potentially a cap casualty.
Who's that?
Fant. So
almost certainly.
Maybe Fant gets lined up with a guy with Atlanta or something like that at less pay. I just see it as a kind of a God. Did you really? You know what? Okay, guys, this goes back to last offseason. This is one of the players that Joe was super overexposed on. Roman Wilson. He didn't.
No, Grant, I was overexposed of him in Bestball Mania at 18th round picks.
He didn't care. He was overexposed on him. He believed in him. He goes, Roman Wilson's my guy. I love Roman Wilson. And the dude proceeded to be injured and never play a snap this season.
He's still profiled amazingly entering into the draft. He single-handedly beat Alabama by himself with J.J. McCarthy, might I add.
Yeah. I mean, this is truth. This is absolute truth, and
but for the record, Bob, that pick would have been Damian Martinez. Damian Martinez is going to be a cheap man's version of Monty, which might mean he never gets on the field. But you know,
very well could be the case.
If I get a chance of getting Roman Wilson just to upset you for 28 seconds, I'm going to do that. That's worth it, guys.
My God. But as it goes here, if teams are struggling in the offensive line market, they're most likely going to ask their tight end to stay back. So, they're most likely going to put in blocking tight ends and not going to be throwing the ball maybe that much to a tight end. So
Can I just point out an anomaly of the end of this draft? For all of you art majors out there, you'll notice this. All of the purple is on the left half, and very little orange is on the left half. It's very interesting how this draft
that's how it went last time. Remember when we had the 4th pick on Monday, there was this weird conglomerate of the Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilsons, Kirk Cousins, Tyler
for
Jackson Darts of the world.
7 rounds. No one from pick 7 to 12 took a quarterback, and they all went the first 6 picks.
Well, you look at the quarterbacks that they did take, though. Those were the Bakers, the Jared Goff.
And can I get on my Shador box now? About why he's going to suck?
You can go on your soapbox.
I mean, all right, first off, he's not elite in anything. If his name wasn't Sanders, he wouldn't even be considered in the first round. His dad forced him to get yardage, and any meaningful game that Colorado played, he was useless. The guy just flat out has nothing elite or special to him, and he's walking around arrogant like he was his dad. His dad was legitimately the top 3 picks, should have gone number 1 in his draft. Shador might not even be the number 4 quarterback in this draft, and he's skipping everything in Indianapolis right now, saying he's too good for the system. That kind of arrogance only works when you're an elite player. If you're just a bro who, we invested a 3rd round in you, you're easily forgotten. It's going to happen to Jeremy Burton in Cincinnati. He was a 3rd round pick last year.
Burton,
is out of the league now. They haven't officially cut him, but he's out of the league. Shador is putting himself in that situation radically. I do believe that he's dropping. I don't know if he's getting out of the 1st round, but he's certainly not going in the top 5 anymore. And I really do think you're going to see my boy I drafted yesterday. Shook is going to have a chance of jumping him. I'm telling you.
On the Shador bus, we drafted Shador a couple times. And I think that's
and never again.
For me. I think that's good enough for me. But what I want to say, if you go to PFF and you go to Shadur's draft profile, the strengths are there, but I want to point out one of the two weaknesses that they pulled out first. Number one, bailing from a clean pocket. In the NFL, if you are given a clean pocket, it is advisable that you find the opportunities within that pocket to be successful. That's number one. Number two, if he ends up on a team that falls and is pressured a lot, then he's more than likely, one of his strengths was that he doesn't turn the ball over. But vis-a-vis this weakness, if he starts moving himself out of the pocket at the NFL level, there is a greater chance that he is going to become more turnover prone. Not saying it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. Secondly, PFF points out that velocity is an issue. Accurate deep ball passer, but the arm strength isn't elite. And if you're going to try to bail from the pocket and your arm strength isn't elite, and you're going to try to Patty Mahomes it, or you're going to try to Josh Allen it or Lamar Jackson it, you are going to be not successful, especially on the teams that are projected to get Shadur. One of those teams, the Titans, right? If the Titans go out and get Shadur, is their offensive line up to snuff?
If he ends up a Titan, it's going to be in the second round.
If he ends up a Titan and his deep ball accuracy is great, hey, Nick Westbrook-Akine, come on down. But
it's not great,
it's problematic. I mean, although he is a good enough college player, we have seen good enough college players at the quarterback position fail consistently in the NFL.
He's going to be that green room guy who doesn't get picked, and his dad's going to have a conniption. That alone is a reason to watch the draft.
I mean, you really, I mean, it's problematic that I think that, going into his turnover percentages, right? This comes from PFS again. 1.3% turnover worthy play percentage, ranks third best among draft eligible quarterbacks. And it rises to only 2.5% when he's pressured, which places eighth in the class. But again,
that's not elite.
That's not worth a top end pick. And in the NFL, you are going to be pressured unless you have an elite offensive line like the Lions, like the Falcons were constructing for Bijan this year. I mean, and some lines are not good at pass protection, but they're good at run blocking. So, if he goes to the wrong team, it is going to be a disaster and a half. He has the talent.
You're 100% right on that, because landing spot 100% matters. But I really do think that there's a large probability that Shador has made himself undesirable, and the demand for him might basically be
wants to deal with
three
Deion.
teams.
In my personal opinion, I seriously don't think that anybody wants to deal with Deion Sanders.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
If I were a GM, I would not want Deion Sanders chirping in my ear, right? Mm-hmm. Because Colorado wasn't the most successful team. He wasn't the most successful coach at the NCAA level. And, his way and his viewpoint about how these players should mesh together and come together is not how you build a dominating franchise within the NCAA. I mean, it's just, I know the lay of the land is changing and there's a lot of transfers in the transfer portal. But again, the reason I believe that they were so successful, again, was competition level. And also the fact that
they weren't that successful, guys.
No. I'm saying Shadur.
Call the elephant out. Colorado was not that successful.
Joe, I'm saying Shadur, not Colorado as a team.
Okay, we're just now dissecting. He's not elite. He doesn't have a good arm. He is a good decision maker, but that's because everything was handed to him on a non-winning team.
Yes.
Like,
but what
is the upside we're going to invest in?
We've talked about this. Go back 3 years ago when we talked about when a quarterback never experiences frustration at the college level and is surrounded by great offensive lines, because you need a great offensive line to be a good quarterback. If you're surrounded by that at the college level, the Alabamas, the Ohio States of the world,
Georgia,
there is a good chance when you reach the NFL level that you are going to experience greater frustrations in doing the things that you were past successful in. That was one of the things that you said that you were worried about with CJ Stroud when he came out.
it is. And to your point, of all the Ohio State quarterbacks ever drafted, including the one we have on our roster right now, only one ever has had an all-pro vote. One. And it was Stroud his rookie year. He didn't even get the all-pro status.
And so let's look at this draft. We finished up this draft. Let's look at it. And let's look at this side of the board because we did notice, 5 and up took a lot of late quarterbacks.
6 and up.
Down on this back end, not a lot. Then you look why. Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. The Bo Nix, I love Bo. Little questionable why you wouldn't take a couple other guys. Scroll down the board a little bit. You got Bo.
Well, that's where Bo Nix was just the start of a trend.
But here's the thing. Again, I'm going to say it again with a little bit more conviction this time. If you're going after a quarterback in this round, you have to have a really strong idea, and you should only go after one. If you're going after a quarterback between the 7th and 9th rounds, you have to have conviction in a couple of things. Number one, your conviction is that this offense is capable of producing 24 plus points a game. That's like the starting point there. This team is capable of producing 24 plus points a game. Number two, this team has pass catchers that are moving the ball downfield and have a running game that is fairly consistent. Okay. All of a sudden, you start to see where some of the framework of these quarterbacks is called into question. Number one, Caleb Williams, right? Caleb Williams needs a running game on that team for him to be a little bit more successful in the passing game. He spikes really good sometimes, but they need a running game. Kyler Murray, problematic, definite avoid for me, not drafting Kyler Murray again this year. Patrick Mahomes being the first one off that board drafted. If I don't have Xavier Worthy or Rashee Rice, I'm probably not taking Patrick Mahomes. He's one of those guys that I feel right now in his career from a fantasy perspective is not rated where he needs to be. This season, there was a lot of games where he is sub 20. And that is not going to be a winning combination, even if you have his best player, because he's not getting 4 or 5 touchdowns as a passer. You need him. The reason he did so well in certain games was because he was running the ball. Bo Nix, again, a poor man's running quarterback that was buoyed.
I think Bo Nix gonna have a major step backwards.
That was buoyed by stats that were because the running game sucked. Now you look, there's a potential that Denver might go out and get Ashton Genty, or they're trying to rebuild that running back room.
Well, they're going to get one of the top backs.
If that's the case, then you have to hope that he continues to get 3-4 touchdowns a game just from passing. And he's capable of it, but will he do it? I'm not sure.
Not with Genty on the roster, unless he's checking them down to him.
Jared Goff is probably the biggest red herring in the draft right now. Unless you have Amon-Ra or unless you have Jameson Williams, there is a variable, unnecessary need to draft Jared Goff where he's being drafted. Jared Goff can produce. We saw multiple games this year, especially the game against Buffalo, where he was the top scoring quarterback, 51 points, something like that. Then you go in and you say, okay, in order to get there, the game script needed to be a high-powered game script. We needed to pass the ball to keep up with Buffalo. It's not often, and then the other game was against Tennessee. That was putrid. That was absolutely the grossest game that you could have had. Schedule could potentially get harder this year. I don't see the wide receivers moving backwards, but where is the room for growth for Jared Goff to continue to produce what he produced with a new offensive coordinator, with the potential of the rising of Gibbs?
I don't think that part's stated enough. They're going to be changing systems. I know people are going to be like, well, but they were consistent for the last couple of years. Well, they're getting a new OC, and there is power in the OC getting the game plan up correctly. I know that.
Yeah, we'll
that
take a look at that, Aaron. I want to definitely see that.
But it's really there. So I like to call out that the 9 team is solid here.
Let's go up and look at Team 9. But that's just, and the only guy that I kind of like in there is Baker. But again, that's if you're drafting those guys. So
and I'm going to completely disagree with you about the 9 team being solid. And here's why. You can't tell me that you're starting 2 running backs. One, first off, is a cap casualty in all probability with Kamara. And if he's not a Saint, he's useless. If he is a Saint, he's on the last legs. And McCaffrey is, again, one of these guys that we make this episode about was to throw shade around. Christian McCaffrey should not be a second-round value. He is going to have a wildly diminished role. He's going to have Debo's numbers. And they're not wrong with Debo's numbers, but they're not running back number 1 going to carry you to victory. Then we go, who's his other running backs? Jaylen Warren? Okay, maybe. He's certainly the number 2 on his team. Dobbins, once he got hurt, never really recovered. That's a story of that guy's career. Mm-hmm. And who's his other running backs? Garendo, who he should have taken Mason ahead of. Garendo's a third guy. J.R. Williams is in the league. That guy's going to be lucky if he gets if he ever hits the top 15 on a weekly basis in his number 1 running back. So, it's that. I know the receivers are sexy.
We're going to show it. We're going to show it in the minute, family.
He's done. Number 9's bad.
When I look at a team that I think is going to be pretty competitive, potentially, with the way they built their room, just looking at the top 7 picks, I really like Team 2. I really like Team 2's top 7 picks.
Sure.
One reason,
hard to fight Bijan and Judkins.
I can't fight Bijan. I think Judkins is going to put in a nice landing spot. Tyreek, Garrett Wilson, Rome, Chris Olave all have question marks, but they do have a pathway to navigate to success.
Yeah, you can see a top 5 week out of all of them without blinking an eye, easily.
Well, yeah, I could see that. Now, coming in and going and looking at team,
who's their quarterback?
Caleb. So that's where I kind of like, but I like.
Tua.
Likely. They have.
They stacked
so
Rome, and they stacked.
I think it's a solid team. Joe, can you show those last few picks for family here?
That's how the draft ended up, guys.
Yeah. So if you go back up to Team 9, Ant commented here, having a ton of spike week guys. I like the potential of the back end of that draft, but I do think that, outside of the wide receivers, right? I really like Team 9's
receivers, not fighting
wide receiver room. Team 9's wide receiver room and Team 2's wide receiver room, I think, are really intriguing to me. I really like the way that those line up. The main problem that I have with Team 9 is Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. Well, but Kamara should be a giant problem for you too.
If Team 9 would have drafted Drake or Bucky or Taylor, I could get on the bus there, but I'm just not having a lot of belief in CMC. And
CMC is a completely valid one. Or they would have taken Monty instead of Kamara.
If I'm taking CMC, the problem is, and this is the problem with CMC in the second round. The problem with CMC in the second round is that by the time you get to the third round, you have no other running back options that are currently today in the league that are considered kind of safe until you get down to the 5th-ish round. I'm going to lay this down for you because this is the case. You look at it. The Christian McCaffrey person took Christian McCaffrey, Puka. Okay, the picks are in. Coming down, then you look, okay, well, do I consider a running back? Well, we talked a little bit on Monday about Kyron and the question marks that Kyron has. We talked a little bit on Monday and last week about Chase Brown and the question mark Chase Brown has. So, of course, I'm going to take a wide receiver. So then you have the option coming back down and saying, okay, well, I have the option of James Cook, Joe Mixon, or Chuba. Again, all those guys have veritable question marks. James Cook usage question mark. Will he be able to replicate the touchdowns? You never want to chase the touchdowns. Will he be able to replicate the usage? Will it get better? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
In fact, actually, family just nailed what I'm about to say. If he takes the pick who went immediately after him in both the 5th and the 4th round, and he takes James Cook instead of Harrison, and then George Pickens instead of Kamara, he would have had a much better team.
Well, no, but this is the point I was making.
Because Kamara's a dead. You guys are yelling at me for Travis for Hunter being potentially dead in the 10th round. Kamara is a dead pick now in the 5th round.
Because Marvin Harrison's spike weeks are projected to be very variable with this Arizona offense. This Marvin Harrison spike weeks and James Cook spike weeks almost go hand in hand in terms of the potentiality of their spike weeks. All James Cook needs for a spike week is 15 carries and 3 touchdowns in the red zone.
Or a division game, because he smokes his division.
He gets those. Marvin Harrison, in order to have a spike week in a half PPR league, is going to need 7 catches, 110 yards, especially without bonuses. DraftKings has bonuses, full PPR, but they don't have their drafts up yet. Marvin Harrison's going to need 6 to 7 catches, 100+ yards, and 2 touchdowns. And it is proven that outside of just a couple of games, Marvin Harrison's isn't doing that yet. So while Marvin Harrison is a great player, if that person would have positioned himself to go and get James Cook in the 9th round, setting up with a solid floor, hell, he could have taken Alvin Kamara next to if he wanted to, and just ended up with Sutton and Jennings. And I think that he would have had the same point potential overall.
Yeah.
But now what has happened is you walk yourself into Christian McCaffrey and Kamara as your top 2. What's the rest of the running back room? This isn't even our team. We're just kind of talking about strategy here. If
we love our team, I like our team very much in this draft.
Then hold on, wait. So then you go after another question mark in J.K. Dobbins. Joe and I do love J.K. Dobbins as a player, but this year they might go out and get more because of the injury risk of Dobbins.
He's probably running back replaced.
Then
rookie replaced.
Then you go out and you get Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren is a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers that could be very successful for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I do think he's going to have a much better year this year than last year, but that doesn't mean he's going to be elite. He's probably getting points out of Jaylen Warren more times than he's not.
So then you look at it. Then you look at it and you say, okay, I've got 4 veritable question marks. And to be honest, we do too at running back. But our question marks aren't because...
The question marks are all going to be drafted in the 1st or 2nd round.
Our question marks aren't because of that player's injury history, etc. These guys are rookies. And so the question is, for most people right now, is do you have the cojones? Do you have the wherewithal to take a rookie over a right now questionable starter?
And
that's the question to ask yourself, because a lot of the players to skip are going to be players whose situations can change at the drop of a hat negatively. Your CMCs, your Ramondres, your Dobbins, your Pacheco, your Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy might get replaced. Your DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift isn't worth drafting either.
CMC, if you take a landmine, there is no adjusting. You just have to assume that pick's a 0 and you wasted it. So,
no.
This is why we go out of our way to do landmine episodes, so you don't implode your team before you start. And that's just the way that, like drafting Kelsey is a wasted pick. And there are so many of them. There's probably 2 in every round once you get past the 5th round.
Okay, well, Joe, let's take a look. Let's take a look here in the 10th round. Okay.
All right.
Just looking at the 10th round in one of our drafts the other day was all quarterbacks.
So DeAndre Swift, is he a starter next year, Bob?
DeAndre Swift.
Certainly not a starter.
I don't see a pathway where he's going to put up successful
wasted
numbers going into the season.
Is
Brian
Indianapolis going to learn how to throw accurate short passes?
Well, you hope so because you drafted Anthony Richardson.
I drafted him for his legs, not for his arms. So I would argue Pittman is borderline wasted.
But I think Pittman normalized himself a little bit. So Pittman was being drafted last year up too high. I think this is the right area to draft Michael Pittman if you want to take him. So I'm not going to call him.
I'll give you Robinson and Bateman. They're appropriately valued.
And Robinson, I like. Travis
Kelce is a wasted pick.
Hunter is one of those players.
Hunter potentially could be a wasted pick. I own that.
But he has at least more potential than potentially Kelce. We'll see.
That's right.
Herbert.
Stephon Diggs is a wasted pick. He's probably never coming back.
Not a wasted pick, but interesting. Cam Scatterbo needs the right situation.
Incredibly right situation.
Tucker Kraft, if that's the tight end you want to go with, why didn't you just draft a tight end somewhere else? He is very touchdown reliant, and it was proven that, once they started looking in other directions, once these wide receivers all came back, that wasn't the guy you really wanted to start.
It wasn't.
Isaiah Likely.
That's a gamble. If Andrews gets moved, that's a home run. If he doesn't, it's not.
And then another rook. So
yeah, Devin Neal I have mixed feelings about, but I'm certainly higher on him than Scatterbo. Again, we picked the 10th round. We weren't trying to cherry pick one. This is just the show. This is why there's so many landmines out there, and that's why we're going to keep doing these drafts.
But the idea here is that to not catch a landmine, what you want to do is to see where the potential peak performance capability, what script can you write for success? And if you can knock a player like 3-4 times, you probably don't want to draft him. So if you have 3 or 4 legitimate, not like, I really don't like them. If you have a legitimate usage concern, because all these players are kind of ADP wise, that's already kind of built in for the most part. But when you
the landmines have not been flushed out yet, is my point.
When you look at the usage, where's the usage going to be? Remember, last year, a lot of people were talking about Chris Godwin, ourselves included. And Chris Godwin, it was said in the news that Chris Godwin's move to the full-time slot role was going to be great. And that paid dividends for anybody who paid attention to that, drafted Chris Godwin early. But again, Joe and I had the belief that Chris Godwin would fall off due to injury. That happened. But again, that wasn't, in terms of him, how many times could you ding him? Right? Fool's gold. How many times could you ding him? And you can variably, Najee, he's another one of the guys we kind of like, but he's starting to get up there in terms of the analysis to say, okay, well, maybe if he lands on Dallas, okay, maybe. Will he get 20 plus carries? Okay, he needs that to be successful. Can he be successful on a team? And to Joe's point, a team that's going to pick him up is going to want to use him. So
that's right. You're not going to pay him and not use him.
That's one thing. And that's why I do think like Jared Goff, for example, is a fool's gold or, a landmine. And to say he performed well, and there's nothing against Jared Goff in general, but where is the pathway to replicate that? And it's going
to be harder for Goff to replicate it than it will be for Purdy to step up. And if you look at it, there's 5 rounds between those two, between Goff and Purdy. So I would rather go that direction. But hey, guys, 5 o'clock's normally when we wrap up here. We love you guys being with us. 3:45 on Mondays and
Eastern
Wednesdays
Standard
are live
Time.
draft.
So thanks everybody for joining us. Like, subscribe, follow. We'll be back Monday, 3:45 Eastern for another Best Ball draft. Thanks again, everybody.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.